A happy Monday to you. Not the best weekend of Toronto Blue Jay baseball. Thank goodness for Nate Pearson and the Kevin Biggio heroics, salvaging at least one game from that Minnesota series, right? Yesterday on Sunday. On today's Locked On Blue Jay podcast, in the first segment, we're going to put a bow on what we saw in that now recently completed 7-game homestand. In the second segment, we're going to get set for the 9-game road trip starting tomorrow night with 3 at Baltimore. This one is a doozy. And in the third and final segment, we'll have some fun with some numbers included in there today. Some mentions about guys like Juan Guzman and Munenori Kawasaki.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. Yes, indeed, I am locked on the Toronto Blue Jays. Have been for pretty much my entire life. A lot of people here in Toronto, Maple Leaf fans, and every time I hear them talking about being a Leaf fan, it's always generational, right? Their parents, their grandparents, their aunts, their uncles, their family got them into Toronto Maple Leaf hockey. For me, that's how I got into Toronto Blue Jay baseball. So, long-time fan. Do thank you for spending part of your day talking Toronto Blue Jay baseball with me. If you're taking this in on the Locked On Blue Jay podcast YouTube page, thank you for that. Please do hit that subscribe, that like, and leave me a comment as well. If you're one of the everydayers making the Locked On Blue Jay podcast your first podcast listen every single day, certainly want to thank you for that. On Apple, want to shout out Hooligan1975. I saw a recent 5-star rating and a great comment, so thank you for that. Al Moose, hope I'm saying that right. Al Moose with a 5-star rating and a great comment as well. If you are taking this in on Apple, please do hit that 5-star. Would really appreciate that. Remember now, the Locked On Blue Jay podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. That's your team every day. And just want to remind you that you can take in every Toronto Blue Jay game this season on SiriusXM. Overall, a 4-3 homestand for the Toronto Blue Jays. Certainly one. I think we would probably agree, perhaps even 2 wins left on the table in this homestand, right? I mean, not game one, not that 11-4 loss against Houston. That was 6-0 before fans even got to their seats. Not that one, 11-4 final, but certainly those 2 Minnesota losses. My goodness, at least one of those should have been a Toronto Blue Jay victory. And a once mighty home team, the Toronto Blue Jays, now just 10-10 over their last 20 at the Rogers Center. And in the previous setting of 20 games, they'd won 14 of the previous 20. 10 wins in their last 20 games at Rogers Center. Remember, this was a team that when they were finally able to come back from COVID in 2021, they were finally able to come back to the Rogers Center. They absolutely wreaked havoc. They were awesome. Well, I think they were 24-11, I believe it was. Absolutely incredible. They were very good at home last season as well. So a bump in the road, definitely. I mean, everydayers will recall we've deep dived this schedule many times. Could some of this be contributed to some fatigue early on? I would very much think so. This schedule has been a bear early on for the Toronto Blue Jays. In fact, now, I mean, don't look now, but this 9-game homestand, this is against 3 teams who, if the playoffs started today, they're all playoff teams. I will say this. The next time the Toronto Blue Jays play a playoff team after this road trip is not until a few series at the other side of the All-Star break. Remember now, the schedule gets significantly better for the Toronto Blue Jays after the All-Star break. So just trying to stick around, stick in that playoff hunt, stick in that playoff chase. Hopefully the hitting is going to come around, in particular the clutch hitting, and hopefully Alek Manoah gets back and the Blue Jays can make a run in the second half. The schedule sets up for them to be able to make a run in the second half. Now, as for this 4-3 recently completed homestand, what did we see here? Well, George Springer, overall 6 for 24, but he finished hot. George Springer finished 5 for his last 10 in this homestand. Remember, had that pinch hit double, followed that up with a double later on the other day as well. And then I believe, didn't he open up the next game with a double, or he might have gotten out and then a double after? He had like a real nice run. He either had 3 doubles in a row or like 3 doubles in 4 at bats, and that was in the last couple of games. That was over the weekend. So hopefully he's starting to get hot. Bo Bichette, oh boy, Bo Bichette just 6 for 29 in this homestand, had that god-awful at-bat on Friday. That was a key contributor to that loss for the Blue Jays. Remember the winning run on third base, less than 2 outs. So who on earth knows what kind of at-bat that was? Who on earth knows what kind of swing decisions and pitches he was chasing? I mean, my goodness. Bo, over the course of this homestand, lost 22 points off that batting average. So Bo right now experiencing, the ebbs and flows, right, of a major league season. But hopefully he's going to, get that going sooner rather than later. How when Bo's on, we know, right? He's absolutely awesome. Now, he did hit a home run off of Blanco in the 4th inning of Wednesday's win. So that was some good news there. But after that, Bo finished the homestand just 2 for 20 and actually was 0 for 5 yesterday. So again, certainly not losing faith, certainly not down on Bo. We know, I mean, he's been just so darn good this season, but truth be told, lost 22 points off his batting average in this homestand, does need to turn things back around. Slim Daddy Vladdy, 6 for 26, and yet again, I mean, stop me if you've heard this before, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., as many home runs at the Rogers Center this season as you or I have. Do you have any home runs at the Rogers Center this season? Nor do I. Nor do I. Nor does Vlad. Nor does Vlad. I'm absolutely stunned. He had 19 at Rogers Center last season. 19. Still looking for his first in 2023. I'm absolutely stunned. Now, he does have 9 road home runs, so hopefully this 9-game road trip, by the time this is done, I'd like to see that be, more like 13 or 14, right? How about Matt Chapman? Matt Chapman just 2 for 18 on this homestand. He continued his free fall. Now, he did have that big home run in Sunday, right? Hopefully something that's going to spark him. But, I mean, since his April Player of the Month, all told, Matt Chapman, 27 for 143. So since that April Player of the Month, Matt Chapman is hitting 189. Holy moly. Holy moly. John Schneider running him out there in the cleanup spot every day, hitting 189 in the last month and a half of this season at home. Would you believe it's even worse? I beg your pardon. In June, it's even worse. It's not like it's on an uptick. In June, he's down to 147. Again, did have that good game Sunday, right? Had that sack fly. Hopefully that was a good at bat. We were looking for a hit. We were looking to rally in the bottom of that first, being down 4-0 quick. But anyway, did get that sack fly and then that home run. And certainly worth mentioning here. This is worth mentioning. Matt Chapman in that series where Baltimore swept the Blue Jays, unfortunately, a few weeks back, he did face a Baltimore starter for game 1. That's Dean Kramer, and he homered off him a few weeks back. So hopefully we're never going to see April Matt Chapman back. April Matt Chapman was a video game, and that's not what the expectations are. But my goodness, the free fall that he's taken, right? He would have to get really hot on this road trip just to get up to 200 since then. Like, my goodness, well, he talk about guys that need to turn it around. My goodness, how about Dalton Varsho? Dalton Varsho, 6 for 22 on this homestand. Now, the good news is he had just 1 home run at home coming into this homestand, but got 2 in this homestand. So there's a guy. Hopefully that arrow is pointed upwards. Between the years, hard to say what's going on with Dalton Varsho. I mean, he comes to the ballpark one day, he's hitting in the 3 spot. The next day, he's hitting the 5 spot. The next day, the 4 spot. The next day, the 8 spot. As long as this isn't messing with him mentally, then okay, John Schneider, do your thing with the lineups, I guess. But definitely, Dalton Varsho on a long list of Toronto Blue Jays that need to get things going offensively. Whit Merrifield overall does have things going offensively. Not great in this homestand, just 5 for 19, just 1 for 2 for stolen bases. Not bad, right? Alejandro Kirk, oh boy, there's no not bad about it. 3 for 18. 3 for 18 in this homestand. Hopefully Danny Jansen is back soon. It does look like Danny Jansen is going to be back very soon. And then, of course, Brandon Belt and Kevin Kiermaier. I mean, what did we see in the homestand with these guys? Hopefully Belt will be back, very soon, as he's been absolutely fire lately, right? Absolute fire. And he was on base in the Baltimore series a few weeks ago. How did he do against Baltimore pitching? Well, he was on base 6 of the 12 times he came to the plate. And hopefully Kevin Kiermaier going to get back sooner rather than later as well, for obvious reasons. We know how good he is. But he's also the first 2 pitchers that the Orioles will throw out there in this series. Kiermaier's hit them both very, very well. So really, really, really want him back sooner rather than later. What else did we see in this homestand? Well, incredibly, amazingly. I mean, maybe you could, at this point, you could have seen it coming, but at the beginning of the season, I was going to tell you that at some point in mid-June, we would see a suspension to the season of Alek Manoah. We would see the Toronto Blue Jays tell him to go to Florida and suspend all sporting activities for a little while. Wow. And as Alek Manoah walks out the door, by the way, that's an 8.68 Rogers Center ERA so far for Alek Manoah. In this homestand, what else did we see? Well, we saw numerous, unfortunately, as per usual, or at least once again, we saw numerous managerial and coaching blunders. My goodness, the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays are not going to do anything for hair regrowth for me. That's already a fact. Well, last thing that I want to mention that we saw in this homestand was I thought Trevor Richards remained on fire. Back on May 9th, Richards allowed a pair of runs to the Phillies. Now, since then, he's thrown 16 2/3 innings pitched, just 3 earned runs. Yes, 2 of them were in this homestand. Yes, it was against Houston, but that was that 11-4 game where Houston hit everything that game. So I'm not even overly concerned with that. But since that May 9th, since he gave up those runs to the Phillies back on May 9th, that's over a month ago, 1.62 ERA. And in those 16 2/3 innings, 28 strikeouts and a whole lot of, like an absolute mess load of awesome changeups. Trevor Richards is making highlight reels like ESPN, yeah, things like highlight reels are around North America right now in baseball, just for how incredible his changeup has been. And he's thrown some that have been nasty, 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 nasty. Coming up on the Locked On Blue Jays, we'll deep dive this 9-game road trip. Get set for it. It's an absolute doozy. And a reminder that all of those games available on SiriusXM. But first, wanted to mention for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. Well, it's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. You just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that that part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game. And when you shop at eBay Motors, over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices all on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit available for U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Toronto Blue Jays head out on this 9-game road trip. I mentioned it's a doozy. How about at Baltimore, at Texas, at Miami? These 3 teams have combined to play 96 home games this season so far, 62-34. Wow, yeah, really, really good home teams. Now, they start with 3 at Baltimore. In the 29 times that the Blue Jays played the Orioles in 2020 and 2021, the Blue Jays absolutely dominated to the tune of 24-14. I loved those days. I loved those days when the Blue Jays were just beating up, where the Orioles were a surefire last place team. And we knew the Orioles were coming. Everydayers will know. We've talked about the Orioles before. We knew they were coming, but I did not think they were coming until next season. With the starting pitching they have right now, I have absolutely no idea how they're winning baseball games, but the truth is, they are winning baseball games. My goodness. The Blue Jays, now there is some good news here. Okay. There is some good news here. I know that a few weeks back, the Orioles did sweep the Blue Jays at home in a weekend series, and only one of the games was really close. But anyway, at Camden Yards in Baltimore, definite glass half full material here. Blue Jays have been absolute fire there over the last several years. How about 23-11 run for the Toronto Blue Jays at Camden Yards in Baltimore? The last time the Blue Jays lost a season series on the road in Baltimore was all the way back in 2018. Okay, let's go, right? Let's go. Now, after that, they'll head to the Lone Star State for a reunion with Marcus Semien. Oh, I'm so sorry. But before I move off that Baltimore, I really should mention, because I think this is key. I really should mention this. The Baltimore Orioles definitely going to be without Cedric Mullins for this series. We know how good he is. That's big. We know how good he is. And also right now, Ryan Mountcastle, who I don't know what he does against other teams, but it doesn't seem to be much. What does he do against the Toronto Blue Jays? He's another reason. He's another reason for the bald head. This guy smashes Toronto Blue Jay pitching. He's out injured currently. We'll see if he's going to be back for this game. Sorry, I should mention that, right? A couple key injuries to Baltimore before we head to the Lone Star State, before we head to Texas with a reunion with Marcus Semien. If you're wondering how Marcus Semien is doing, the former Blue Jay, you know what? I doubt that you even are wondering. He's the one former Blue Jay that I find fans really keep up with. A lot of fans keeping up with Moreno, Ateo, and Lourdes. Yes, I mean, all true, yes. But, man, it's so easy to daydream what this team, what this franchise would be if Marcus Semien was still part of it. Can you imagine the double play combo of Semien and Bo? In fact, both of them with a 3.3 WAR right now, which is tops in all of baseball. Just absolutely incredible seasons they're both having. Marcus Semien's OPS is at 848, which is a smidge behind Bo. So Marcus Semien would be second on the Toronto Blue Jays. And again, him and Bo, I mean, what a double play combo they would be. I know. Craig, stop with what could have been, because it's too painful. It just would have been absolutely epic. I do hear that. Now, the last time that the Blue Jays lost a season series to the Texas Rangers was back in 2012. Blue Jays have won 7 of the last 9 matchups as well. So, I mean, Texas, here's another team. Baltimore saw coming. Texas definitely. Baltimore saw coming down the road. Texas, I didn't see coming at all, especially in 2023. I thought they threw a lot of money at a lot of different problems, and it's rare that works. In fact, DeGrom already gone and out, right? But holy cow, is Texas putting together a season. They're ahead of the Houston Astros right now. They are looking, they're a 41-win team right now. By the way, so are the Baltimore Orioles. How's that for a road trip starter? 41-win Orioles team, then a 41-win Rangers team. My goodness. Now, historically speaking, of course, things look real good when it comes to the Toronto Blue Jays versus the Texas Rangers. The 2015 ALDS saw the Rangers upset the Blue Jays in games 1 and games 2. Right? That's a best of 5 series. That was scary. That was scary. But of course, the Blue Jays would rhyme off wins in games 3, 4, and 5 to win that series. These two franchises would meet again the very next season in the very, very same American League Division Series, and the Toronto Blue Jays would sweep that time. So 2-0 series lead for the Rangers in 2015 goes all the way to the Blue Jays on a 6-0 run against the Rangers in the playoffs. And in there, of course, you may remember the bat flip. Okay. Last season, Blue Jays took 2 out of 3 in Texas. Bo, Vlad, and Chapman all had really good series at Globe Life Field. So hopefully that's something to get excited about, as did Danny Jansen. We mentioned earlier, he should be back with the Blue Jays soon. This ballpark should, or at the very least, could, it gives Jansen a chance to kickstart himself. Because remember, that was the real kicker about Jansen getting hurt, not only from a catcher's depth standpoint. I mean, obviously, yes, but Danny Jansen, at the time of him going out to his injury, was really starting to play good baseball and really starting to catch fire. And earlier in the season, even when Jansen wasn't hitting, his defense and his game calling was wow. He was calling the shutouts left, right, and center, right? So it'd be great to have Danny Jansen back. It'd be great to have him hitting at Globe Life Field in Texas. And then now, just like in the Rangers matchup, where the Blue Jays have won 7 of the last 9 matchups, same with the Miami Marlins. That's where the Blue Jays will head next. Now, Miami and the Blue Jays haven't played in a while. That is true. And I'm sure that former Marlins manager Don Mattingly will be holding court throughout that series. But again, if the playoffs started today, the Toronto Blue Jays are out. The Miami Marlins are in. And the Miami Marlins right now are hot. They've got 12 wins in their last 15 games. And remember, now that's a 3-game series that's on the heels of the Rangers, who've won 15 out of 21, which is on the heels of an opening series against the very tough Oakland A's. All 3 opponents on this road trip, again, in the playoffs, and the Blue Jays will not face another playoff team for a while. So could a 5-4 road trip, be great on the surface? I'd have to say it's always, when you say things like this, it's always one of those, be careful what you wish for, right? Because on the surface, wouldn't we sign up for 5-4 right here and right now? But then we'd be upset. What if the Jays win 5 of the first 6 games, right? And then go and get swept by the Marlins and end up that 5-4, right? So it's one of those, you always be careful what you wish for. But I do think, I have to think that right here, right now, given the factors of where the Blue Jays are in the standings, they're a game over 500. You want to be a 500 team on the road. This is 3 very, very, very good teams, and don't play another playoff team for a while. So if they can tread water here, don't fall flat on their face on this road trip. Remember that 3-6 road trip a couple weeks back? Cannot happen here. Needs to be minimum 4-5, hopefully minimum 5-4. Now you ride the wave of the schedule really becoming in the favor of the Toronto Blue Jays, and you make your run going forward. Now, over the weekend, the Toronto Blue Jays played games numbers 65, 66, and 67 of the season. So let's have some fun looking at those numbers and their significance in franchise history. Let's start with number 65. 65 is the Toronto Blue Jay franchise records for most sacrifice flies over the course of a career as a Toronto Blue Jay, and that record belongs to who is an absolute RBI machine in Toronto Blue Jay history. Yeah, Joe Carter. Absolute RBI machine. Stark contrast, right, to the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays hitting with runners in scoring position. Joe Carter did not leave a man in scoring position out there. He did not leave an RBI opportunity on the table. He did whatever it took, hook or crook, to get that run, and he was so good at that. In 92, Joe Carter led baseball with 13 sac flies, led again in 93 with 13 sac flies, 92 and 93, Blue Jays champions, and Joe Carter hitting right in the middle of that lineup. Joe Carter would be a Blue Jay for 7 seasons. He would amass 736 RBIs as a Toronto Blue Jay. My goodness. In 6 of his 7 seasons with the Blue Jays, he would get at least 100 RBIs. In fact, all told in his career, how about 10 seasons for Joe Carter? Double digits with at least triple-digit RBIs. My goodness. His last season with at least 100 RBIs was 1997. That was as a 37-year-old with the Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, all the way through his career, he hit, and he hit with men in scoring position. How about, did he come through with men in scoring position? Did he drive in runs in the playoffs? Well, we know the touch 'em all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life. We know what happened in Game 6 of the 93 World Series against the Phillies, yes, but all told, 20 playoff RBIs for the Toronto Blue Jays. And again, yes, RBIs 18, 19, and 20 were amazing, were spectacular. But Joe Carter, my God, always awesome to be able to shout out Joe Carter. Number 66. How about Juan Guzman? Juan Guzman wore number 66 for the Toronto Blue Jays. 8 of his 10 seasons in the big leagues, Juan Guzman was a Toronto Blue Jay. 76 and 62 overall for the Jays, ERA just over 4. And you may think, if you were around for Guzman, you saw how good he was, or if you just heard the lore of Juan Guzman, I feel like he is a little underrated in Blue Jay history, but I know you've heard of him, and people have heard of him and know that he was good. So you might be a little surprised to hear that his career ERA was at 4.07. He did have a lot of blow-up seasons towards the end of his Blue Jay tenure. He had, a lot of blow-up seasons at the end there, where his legend was born was at the beginning of his career. Just some fantastic seasons with the Toronto Blue Jays. His first 3 seasons in baseball, all with the Blue Jays, 91, 92, and 93, they were eye pop emoji. He was 30 and 11. He was 30 and 11 those first 3 seasons with the Toronto Blue Jays. 18 and 5 with the 92 champions, then 14 and 3 with the 93 champions. And how was he in the playoffs, by the way? How was Juan Guzman in the playoffs for the Toronto Blue Jays? How about the term cash money? He's 5-1, or he went 5-1 over the course of his career in the Blue Jays in the playoffs. The Blue Jays won 7 of his 8 playoff starts. I mean, is that good? The only playoff start they lost of Juan Guzman's was Game 5 of the '93 World Series. That was on the heels of, remember that Game 4? Every day as well. Remember, we've talked about that Game 4 a few times here. That 15-14 unbelievable baseball game, one of the most incredible baseball games I've ever seen in my life. That 15-14 victory that made it 3-1, made the series 3-1 for the Blue Jays, and meant that game 3 and 4 that were in Philly. Blue Jays won those 2 games in Philly, and then Game 5 was also in Philly. And Curt Schilling just said, "Hey, Blue Jays, you aren't." It was 3-1 Blue Jays. Curt Schilling in that Game 5 against Juan Guzman said, "Blue Jays, you are not taking the championship here on our home field here." Curt Schilling was incredible, a complete game shutout. Juan Guzman pitched 7 great innings that game as well. So that's the only loss that the Blue Jays ever had with Guzman on the mound in the playoffs, is because Curt Schilling spun that absolute gem. When Juan was on, that was fun to say. When Juan was on, he could sink his fastball, he could rise his fastball, had a really good slider plus a curve. I mean, and he was, they used to say about him that he was just wild enough to be effective, because he was running it up there in the low to mid 90s, which in the early 90s was eye pop emoji. I mean, that was a serious pitch, right? You're running it up there in the early to mid 90s. Back in the early to mid 90s, that was a very, very legit heater. And again, all kinds of movement on his pitches. When he was on, he was just nasty. Juan Guzman, one of the great pitchers, I would say, in Toronto Blue Jay franchise history. Again, I want to say one of the more underrated pitchers in Toronto Blue Jay franchise history. Maybe it's at the end of the day, maybe it's the overall numbers, but man, his stuff, holy moly. Who else wore number 26? Who else wore number 66 in Toronto Blue Jay franchise history? How about Munenori Kawasaki? Wow. You remember him, right? Everybody remembers Kawasaki, yes? First Japanese-born player for the Blue Jays, was on Team Japan in 2006. That was the first ever World Baseball Classic, and Japan won that. So he was on the first World Baseball Classic champions. How cool is that? On the professional level, he played all 4 infield positions. I mean, this guy, have glove, will travel. Decent hitter, not a great hitter, spray hitter, right? But that glove, holy moly, he was really good defensively. Played a lot in the Japan League, and was one of the stars in the Japan League. I think it was like a 7-time All-Star, if I remember correctly, in the Japan League. He was, my goodness, even when he left Major League Baseball, he went back to the Japan League because he was just such a star there. On the major league level, you would say that Kawasaki was a real good depth guy to have in your organization, again, because of the defense, and just such a great clubhouse guy, right? Munenori Kawasaki, my mind's eye is telling me that there was one time, but I really don't think there was, where he was actually brought up because of skill, like because he was doing well. I mean, like he had kicked down the door for a promotion. I'm pretty sure that every time Kawasaki came up to the big league level, it was to replace an injury. But again, that's what we talk about, a depth guy in your organization, right? I mean, Jose Reyes, Melky Cabrera, Steve Tollison, Macier Asturis. A lot of these guys over the couple seasons that Kawasaki was in the Blue Jays organization would get hurt. Up would come Kawasaki. And Munenori Kawasaki, you talk about a quick fan favorite. Mark DeRosa. Do you remember Mark DeRosa? He was the manager of the Team USA in the World Baseball in this past World Baseball Classic, and he does just an outstanding job on the MLB network. Well, he was a Toronto Blue Jay. This is towards the end of his playing career, and he pretty much helped introduce Munenori Kawasaki to the Toronto Blue Jay fan base, and it was a quick love affair thereafter. Kawasaki, so easy to cheer for. What's not to love about that guy, right? That's a wrap for Monday's Locked On Blue Jays podcast. Locked On Blue Jays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Keep it locked on the Locked On Podcast Network and check out Sully hosting Locked On MLB. Later this week, I'm joined by prospect guru Aram Layton. I cannot wait for that. He's from Just Baseball, and we'll be deep diving Toronto Blue Jay prospects. Drop your comments with what Blue Jay prospects you want us to talk about. Go Jays, go, and we'll talk tomorrow.